Before you have your next big team meeting, the one where you rally everyone together, you put the big revenue numbers up on the slide and everyone talks about how to get there. Before you do that, I want you to remove revenue completely, not just from the slide, but from the entire conversation. And instead, I want you to put one number for each division that department is directly responsible for. The number that if they do their job and they do it well, they can actually influence that number immediately. I want you to do that. I'm going to tell you why today, and it starts with a water bottle. Welcome to Managing Made Simple, a real talk podcast about the ins and outs of leading a team. I'm Lia Garvin, your host, and bring a decade of experience driving team operations in places like Google, Apple, and Microsoft on a mission to make leading your team easier. From delegating to feedback to one-on-ones and more, each week is a mini masterclass on making leading your team easier. Whether you're managing one person or 100, everyone is welcome to hang out on Managing Made Simple. Years ago, I was working at Google on the hardware team, and there was a big launch for maybe the Pixel, their Chromebook. Years ago, I was working at Google on the hardware team, and there was a big product launch. And to say thank you to everyone, they sent everyone a fancy water bottle. Now, I looked at this water bottle and sure, it was nice enough. Probably a $40, $50 water bottle, probably more than I would have bought. But I thought to myself, the company launched this major hardware product. The executives made however many millions of dollars in bonuses. The company, however many billions of dollars in revenue. And they gave out a freaking water bottle. Like, that's the way they said thank you. And the truth is, I don't know if the executives got any bonuses. I don't know if the launch made the company money. But the gesture, giving out a water bottle for something that big in scale for the whole company, it felt like a jab. And I share this because when we talk about revenue numbers, when you're running a business and let's say you want to hit $10 million in revenue and you're talking to your employees about how you're going to get there and what everyone needs to do, and you all have to rally together and you have to make this change and that, and you all have to put the pedal to the metal and the nose to the grindstone and work harder. And you tell them that. And they're making $150K a year, maybe $20 an hour. I don't know, whatever they're making. It's substantially less than that 10 million. They hear you talk about 10 million and they think they're going to make $10 million off my back. Like, here I'm making $20 an hour and they're going to go take home $10 million at the end of the year. This is BS. They feel unmotivated. They don't feel rallied around this big number. It doesn't make them want to work harder. It makes them feel taken advantage of. And no, your employee does not know the cost of running a business. I work with a lot of med spas. You know how freaking expensive it is to run a med spa? You have the physical location, the electricity, the cost of the machines and the lasers, the product, the employees, the retail. That's one of the most expensive businesses to run. So you try to make 10 million, and by the time you pay for everything, you're taking home, I don't know, a couple $100,000 a year. Your employees, they don't know that. And explaining that and walking through the laundry list, well, that's not going to explain it either. Same thing with if you're a middle manager in a corporation. What the company's making, what people are taking home, what you're making as a leader, like, none of those have anything to do with each other. Your employee, they don't really care. They just feel like there's this big number that someone's getting, someone's taking it home, and it's not them. So you can't talk about the revenue number. You can't, because it just doesn't feel real to people. If you're working in a multi-billion-dollar corporation and you're hearing about the big goal, we want to hit this profitability, the shareholders and all these things, your employees, they don't know how their day-to-day job fits into the bigger picture. They don't really get it. So they nod along, but it doesn't change the way they work. If you say you want to reach this profitability goal this year versus that, it doesn't land. And it's the same, again, if you're running a small business. If you say, okay, we made 3 million last year, we want to make 5 next year, and here's what we're doing. Your employee is just thinking you're trying to make more money so you can take more vacations and go out on a private jet or a yacht. It does not compute for them. You're just handing out the high-end water bottle, telling your team that they should be grateful for what they got. So what do you do instead? You have to talk about metrics that they're actually responsible for, metrics that they and their work day to day actually moves the needle. So let's talk about how to do this for every team member or every department. Ensure that everyone can say this sentence out loud. When I do my job every day, this number changes. And if they can't finish that sentence, they don't really know what metric that they're responsible for. And guess what? You, as their manager, it's your responsibility to show them what that is. Take, for example, someone that works at the front desk at a med spa or a gym or physical therapy clinic or chiropractic clinic, the person that is collecting payment at the end. That person's not directly responsible for the revenue, right? They're contributing to the bigger picture, sure. But that person that is collecting the credit card is responsible for rebooking that customer for their next visit. That is the answer. That is what that person is directly responsible for. And when they do their job right, which is asking when do you want to rebook and scheduling the person and talking about the cancellation policy and talking about the cancellation policy, making it super easy to book, people book, and the rebooking rate goes up, and that person has done a good job at that. That is an example. That's a metric that they influence. And so when you have that big team meeting, you would put up on the slide, the front desk person or guest services, you are responsible for increasing rebooking rate or X percentage of rebooking rate. That is their metric. And sure, that eventually is going to improve revenue and profitability, all the things, but it starts at giving someone a super concrete metric that they understand and know they're responsible for. Let's take another example. Let's say you work in a creative team, whether you're in an agency or you're working in-house. The creative team might feel like, well, there's not really a metric that we can be tracking. We can't really, we work on feels and vibes. Well, actually, a metric a creative team can be working against is how many rounds of revisions are needed. I remember when I worked in creative teams at Apple or Google at Microsoft, when we would share something with a VP and they would either approve it or not, or executive stakeholder or not, each time we revised it, that was time that maybe would delay the project, right? And affect the timeline. Same thing when I worked in agencies, the number of revisions that would start to affect the bottom line. So your creative teams actually does have a very clear metric, and it's how deeply do they understand the creative brief, the goals of the client or the stakeholder, and how fast can they hit that target? Like that is a very measurable thing that you can offer to a creative team. And so again, just like with the front desk person, your creative team has done a good job when they have reduced the number of revisions needed to get to the right concept. Completely measurable right there. And let's take another example with the project manager. Maybe you're working in construction or software development somewhere else. You're responsible for making sure that projects are completed on time. And if there's any risk, working through mitigation strategies, moving different parts around, talking to stakeholders so that milestones are completed on time and within budget. That is completely measurable, right? The percentage of milestones that were completed on time or the percentage of budget that things went over. These are things that you can measure across every single role in your team. And when you make it super clear for your employees, okay, here's what you're directly responsible for. When this number goes up or down, that's a win or a loss, whatever it looks like. They know, okay, I need to move the needle in this way. Now, the beauty of this is it's not just about, okay, I went through my checklist and I got my work done and I go home. When they understand the big number that they're moving, again, whether it is the rebooking rate or the project completion or the number of revisions or anything else, they start to think creatively. They think, okay, well, I went through this set of lists, but this set of tasks, but the number didn't move in the way I wanted to. What else can I do? Okay, well, now I'm going to try to, for the creatives example, okay, now I'm going to set up a couple of days before we get started to really research what the client wants to see, to do a little bit more competitive analysis. If I'm working in a larger company, to understand what's happening in other places around the company so that I'm addressing that in the creative. If I'm working in the project management space, okay, I know that this team that I work with over here is usually late, so I'm going to do this to get ahead of that. You see your team members start to take total accountability because they know exactly what they're supposed to do. And this is the biggest shift. And it starts with removing the conversation about revenue because that just doesn't connect. Now, the good news is you still have the revenue and profitability covered, Because every single thing that your team is doing to move their individual metric, of course, that's going to ladder up to the bigger goals. Because if it's not, they shouldn't be doing that thing anyway, right? So that's the beauty of it. Now, I mentioned that I work with teams on this in my Ops Playbook program, working with small business owners from 3 to about 30 employees on how to spell out these specific metrics, what your team is focusing on in each division or each role, so that they know how to move the needle. And I work with corporate managers on this all the time. It can be really tough to translate this between what your team is doing into the bigger company vision, into the bigger company strategy. So with my corporate managers, we look across, well, what is the team responsible for? How does every single person see the dots between what they're doing and the bigger division and the bigger picture? And what metrics and goals do we need to set along the way to make sure people feel really bought in? So again, whether you have a company big or small, whether you're a business owner or a corporate manager, it is about making sure your employees are super clear on what metric they're moving, what they are directly responsible for. If they do more of something, what should go up or down? If they do less of something, what should go up or down? So that's how we measure success. And at the end of the day, all your team members want to know is, am I doing the right thing? Am I working on the right thing? And am I gonna be compensated more for that? I want to give you a quick example before we wrap up. I use this exact approach with a client, Robin, who runs a highly profitable med spa in South Florida. Okay, that's why I use the med spa example, because it's near and dear to my heart. So Robin was experiencing exactly what I talked about. She had big, ambitious goals. She wanted to open a third location. And so she talked about what profitability the team needed to have to hit that. And when she would show big numbers on the slide during her team meeting, her team members' eyes would glaze over. They didn't understand it. They didn't care. And they said, well, it looks like you're trying to make a lot of money. I'm over here making however much an hour. Like, I don't really feel incentivized. I don't really know how I fit into the bigger picture. And when I worked with her on implementing the Ops Playbook, and part of that in coaching her individual team members on how to bring that to life and what their role in it was, I heard these frustrations. I heard, well, yeah, it's great. Robin wants to open another location, but seems like that's just going to be a lot more work for me. Or Robin wants to hit $10 million, but my paycheck hasn't gone up. So I don't really know how to fit in with that. And when I heard these frustrations, I knew we had not made it real what each team member was responsible for. The injectors, they were responsible for increasing the average cost per visit, for understanding what services work together to improve people's results faster. This was something they already wanted to do. They just didn't realize how to do that. So when I taught them how to have those conversations, they started to discuss products and services that went together, and the average cost per visit, it went up. For the person at the front desk, you're responsible for increasing the rebooking rate. When someone checks out at the end of the visit, don't ask them if they'd like to rebook. Say, when would you like to rebook? And each time that goes up, you have done a better job at this thing. I made it super clear for every single department. This is what you're responsible for. And then on the back end, because this is a part of the Ops Playbook as well, we talked about, well, what incentives are on the other side? What bonuses and commissions and raises do you get when you've increased that metric, right? Because it's something you're responsible for, so you feel empowered. And it all starts by getting rid of the revenue number and talking about those specific individualized metrics. So if you need support figuring out what that looks like for your team, business owners, this looks like creating the Ops Playbook so that you know exactly what those goals are, exactly how to talk about them with your team, and structure the performance incentive on the back end. And for corporate managers struggling with something very similar, where your team isn't feeling motivated around the big, broader goals of the organization, this is something that we map out in my advisory sessions. Anybody, any leader, any setting, I've got you covered. Reach out at liagarvin.com/contact. See you next time.